Hello there, it's Go Ahead Senior 1 football final week. Kilmacud Crokes and Ballyboden Endas set to battle it out for a place in the Roll of Honour list this Sunday afternoon in the final at Parnell Park. Crokes going for their third title in a row, Bowden aiming for a fifth ever title and a first since 2019. Coming up, we're going to be chatting to both clubs ahead of the big game this weekend. We'll hear from Bowden Vice Chair John Ryan on a big fortnight for them. They're in the Senior 1 football final this weekend against Crokes, and they're in the Senior 1 hurling final the weekend after against Nafina. We'll also hear from the Kilmacud Crokes chairperson Joan Keogh about the great work going on there as well ahead of a big weekend for them in the Senior 1 football final this weekend. First up, though, let's take a look at the game itself. Coman Goggins is going to be joining us in a moment to look ahead to what promises to be a cracking game. It's the Go Ahead Senior 1 football final. It's Ballyboden Endas versus Kilmacud Crokes.
It's final weekend in the Go Ahead Dublin Senior 1 Football Championship 2023. We have Kilmacud Crokes, the reigning Dublin and All-Ireland club champions, bidding to retain their titles. This year Crokes are looking for their third consecutive title, and the champions meant business from the start. They topped their group, winning 3 from 3 and saw off Ballyboden in the quarter-finals, before showing their mettle by battling past Raheny in a thrilling semi-final. In their way of a 3 in a row stands a familiar foe. The 4-time champions Ballyboden St Endas also mean business. They were perfect in their group, beating Castleknock and St Jude's in the knockout stages to reach the final. Ballyboden are looking for their first Dublin title since 2019. This game is going to be an epic. Can Ballyboden stop Kilmacud making it 3 in a row? It all goes down this Sunday at 4 p.m. in Parnell Park. Get your tickets now at dublingaa.ie.
Okay, delighted to be joined now by former Dublin captain Coman Goggins to look ahead to Sunday's game, Ballyboden St Endas versus Kilmacud Crokes, the battle of the Southside big guns. Coman, we'll get to that in a moment. I guess first of all the final itself, but firstly, what's your assessment been of the season overall so far? Plenty of thrills and spills in this championship campaign, a good few decent games as well. What's your assessment been of the campaign so far?
Yeah, well, firstly, Derek, I'm delighted to join you from this new studio I've discovered inside my own house here, so don't let the pink put you off.
I love the wallpaper, it's great.
Yeah, thanks
a
million. I'm always just looking to add a little bit, Yeah, look, the championship is great. I've been very fortunate through Dubs TV to have seen probably a lot more matches than you generally get to see because of the fact that obviously people have access through Dubs TV, but you may not go unless your own club is involved. Like I think the way the championship is structured in terms of Senior 1 and Senior 2 means that the teams in each of those competitions has actually a chance of trying to win the competition. Now, admittedly, you mentioned the battle of the two big Southside giants in terms of Ballyboden and Kilmacud. I don't know if many people would have predicted that Ballyboden would have made a county final at the start of the championship. Certainly, they're good enough to get there and they have the quality and the talent to do it. But they maybe haven't been or have struggled over the last number of years to put those results together to get them to a final. And obviously, Crokes are current county and All-Ireland champions, so they were always going to be in the mix. But as was demonstrated by Raheny, there's always an opportunity, particularly when you're competing at that level, to maybe get one over the big guys. And they're probably the ones who probably won't tune in at the weekend because of the fact that they maybe feel that they could be there and taking part in the big day, which would have been a fantastic achievement both for the players and management, and also that anybody who's associated with Raheny GAA club. So in general, I think the competitions are great. I think the early stages of the round robins of the league format, it probably takes teams a little bit of a while to get going. Like this year, Dublin were probably only 8-10 days out from winning an All-Ireland final when the championship kicked off. So it was a little bit slow to get going, a little bit slow to build a bit of momentum, and maybe a little bit slow for the excitement to start pulsating, I guess. But you've seen the last round of those group games, some big teams dropped at that stage because of points difference, scoring difference. A lot of teams finished on similar scores, and some teams you would have fancied to have come through to the quarterfinals missed out. Other clubs who maybe you wouldn't have expected to see came through. So I think the way the competition is structured, means it gives everyone a chance, and it gives us those thrills and spills early in the competition, and then obviously leads to, what's, on paper, I suppose, a really exciting final to look forward to at the weekend.
Yeah, Coman, you mentioned Raheny there, and I mean, they're probably one of the stories of the championship campaign, leaving aside the finalists, obviously, because like last year, obviously came close to getting relegated in the relegation playoff against Clontarf last year. This year, getting out of their group through quarter-final and into the semi-final and almost knocking out the 3 in a row chasing Kilmacud. It's a really brilliant story and one of the big stories of the championship campaign this year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm sure looking back, Raheny will have regrets in terms of some of the opportunities that they maybe didn't get late on, the goal they conceded late on. So they had opportunities to win the game. And on one hand, you'll say it's a fantastic learning for them and they'll come back next year. It's such a difficult competition to come back and do well in year on year on year. And Kilmacud Crokes, are so strong in terms of what they've been able to achieve over the last number of years. But if you look at some of the other clubs who've been in county finals, who've been in semi-finals, they've struggled to come back again the following year, the Fina last year, because it's just so difficult to get a run on and get results, and because it's so intense in terms of the competition. So, brilliant for Raheny to get to where they got to, but there's certainly an opportunity lost there. And next year, everyone starts from scratch. So it's not like Raheny have an advantage because of what they achieved this year. And you don't mean to be harping on about the opportunity that's lost, but they're so difficult to come by in terms of appearances in a county final that when you get a chance, you need to kick the door down and take it. And credit to Kilmacud, they stuck in the fight. They got themselves an opportunity to draw the game and then to go on ahead and win it. And that's maybe the mark of true champions, and that they were able to dig out a result when maybe it wasn't going so well for them on the day, and probably leads into the final conversation we're going to have around who do you fancy and why do you fancy them. But Raheny can take huge solace from the way they performed through the championship. They left a result behind them as well in the group stages where they probably could have finished higher in the group. So they've had a great year. They've built momentum. It's been a huge benefit to them that they have the likes of Brian Fenton. I know Brian Howard got injured in the season there, that they're available to them and they're able to play at the level that you expect them to play at because of their inter-county experience. So for the team to have those guys coming back in and slotting in and playing makes everyone that little bit better every time they go out onto the field. So yes, opportunity lost, but a huge chance for Raheny to build on it. There's a bit of momentum behind them. So could have been a massive story. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, but I'm quite sure there'll be another chapter written in the storybook come this weekend.
Yeah, talking about this weekend, it's Bowden against Crokes. Both teams there on merit, in your opinion, based on the campaign so far?
Yeah, I know I touched off at the beginning of this that, Ballyboden might have been predicted to get there, and that's maybe just based on recent form in championship and maybe their not so much their league form, but just maybe championship form. So when you roll all the dice and you see the games play out as it is, yes, the two strongest teams on paper certainly are in the county final. That's not to take away from the opportunities that they've had to get there. Ballyboden probably more impressive in the run to the final than Kilmacud Crokes. Certainly their opening half in the semi-final against Jude's was an awesome performance, as good as I've seen a team play outside of maybe Ballymun's performance a couple of years ago when they had, say, the COVID break, where they had everyone together with them for a much longer period of time, that they just blitzed through the Dublin Championship and arguably could have won an All-Ireland if the competition had taken place. But it was a really strong first half performance. They'll have regrets on their second half performance, and St. Jude's will certainly have regrets that they created a good number of goal chances and weren't able to take any in the second half. That would have narrowed the gap. In fact, potentially, if they got two of the goal chances, would have put them ahead at a stage in the second half. But Bowden dug in and managed to get a result out. So on paper, absolutely the two strongest teams, I would say, in Dublin that are in the county final. But probably Kilmacud not at the level that we're used to seeing them play at over the last number of games, whereas Ballyboden maybe just that little bit better, or looking that little bit better in getting to this stage.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there. I think you mentioned a few minutes ago the fact that Crokes, obviously the last day, and form-wise, they maybe haven't been the team that we've seen over the past couple of years. And have a look at some of their results here over the last while. And 14 points to 2-5 against St. Sylvester's, a big win against Castleknock in round 2, but round 3, 117 to 17 points against Skerries, 14-10 against Ballyboden in the quarter-final, and obviously went to penalties in the semi-final. So they haven't been blowing maybe teams away as they have been doing over the past few years. But as we saw the last day against Raheny, they're a hard team to beat. And when it comes down to it, and they're 3 points down deep into injury time, and it looks like they're out and suddenly they're not out, that can play a major part when a team knows how to grind out a win, no matter how well or how badly they're playing. that can obviously play a major part, especially in the final against a team of the quality of Ballyboden as well.
Yeah, 100%. And how do you get to a point where you're winning games that you shouldn't be winning? By building on what they've achieved over the last number of years in terms of their All-Ireland success, their domination in Dublin Championship over the last few years. They find a way to win on the back of that experience. They have enough players within their squad who've been there, seen it, know how to use the ball when the crunch comes on. And I guess your team is only as good as the weakest link or the highest or lowest level, I suppose, that you're trained in terms of skill. So if you've worked on scenarios where in the last minute you need a goal, you've worked on scenarios where you need to retain the ball, then you're able to create and do what Kilmacud Crokes did in the last couple of minutes against Raheny. Admittedly, Raheny still had opportunity after that, but they still got themselves to a point where they were in a draw position when it looked like they were beaten and into injury time at that stage. So that's the mark of champions, the fact you can find a way to get a result when maybe things aren't going your way. And when you're looking ahead to this weekend, and I've mentioned maybe Ballyboden are moving that a little bit more freely, certainly in the first half against St. Jude's. And in general, maybe their results have been a little bit better and their performance is that little bit better. The fear that Ballyboden must have is that even playing not as well as they have played, Kilmacud can find results. And that's a challenge for Ballyboden because a 30-minute performance isn't going to win you a county final. So the 30 minutes to produce against Jude's is finished. They need to perform for 60 minutes or at least be able to control the game for 60 minutes to allow themselves opportunity to win it. Whereas you leave the door open for Kilmacud Crokes. It's not the first time they've done it. They were behind in the county final a couple of years ago against St. Jude's and they managed to come back and win that game. So they have form in terms of going to the last whistle. And I think that's where this county final probably be won or lost in the last 5 or 10 minutes. Who's in the mix? Who can get you the critical score when it comes down into the real clutch moments in the game? And that's why this is going to go right down to the wire, regardless of who's playing well and who's not playing well.
Yeah, and from that point of view, I guess there's no real difference in terms of experience of both teams. Obviously, Crokes are going for 3 in a row, so they're hugely experienced in terms of winning games and winning county finals, as they've done over the past couple of years. But on Ballyboden's side, they've got players the likes of Michael Darragh-McCauley, one of the most experienced players in the country there ever has been in GAA. Ryan Basquel, Collie Basquel, players like that who have performed on the big stage and played on the big stage and obviously played and won things with Ballyboden's and Endas, All Ireland's with Ballyboden's and Endas back in 2016. So there's huge experience in both sides. There's no real advantage maybe for Crokes there that you would expect maybe for a team chasing 3 in a row.
No, I mean, up front, obviously, all the talk is around your Paul Mannions and Shane Walsh when you're talking about Kilmacud Crokes. But they've so many leaders outside of those two guys who are able to get on ball and create opportunities. They have a very strong half-back line who love to push forward at pace. And Ballyboden, similar, have that type of ability across their half-back line. We've seen through James Holland and Alex Gavin, who had an outstanding game the last day, that pace and momentum that they bring into those forward moves. So I think you have two teams who very much will be looking to find an edge in terms of their matchups. So who will mark who in terms of trying to negate their impact, and then how can we free up our better players to allow them to have some creativity within the game. But don't be surprised to see standout performances from defenders on the weekend, because it's going to require full back lines, and particularly those guys who like doing the man marking jobs, to deny the scoring opportunities to either the Basquels or Mannions, the Shane Walshes. That you're looking all the time to restrict the impact. You look at the impact Ryan O'Dwyer had as well on the edge of the square. So how can you get that right without pulling back totally from your attacking formations? Yes, you need to go defensive, but you also need to get out and try and play a little bit. And what Ballyboden did brilliantly last day out was they nearly went one-on-one, man-to-man against Jews and asked questions individually. And therefore, when they broke, they had players forward that they could attack with pace with. Kilmacud Crokes do something similar. They back their individuals to get a job done against their direct opponent. So while they'll drop back and they'll filter back, that 45-metre line is this massive contact point. Once you come over there, you're going to be hit with physicality. We're going to try and turn you over on the basis that we have enough guys who are going to get out of pace to try and cause a problem the other end. So Drew, you look at the two team sheets, there won't be a huge amount in it. It's really going to come down to the little nuances around the matchups, who can get their key players involved in the game, and then what defender is able to have a real impact and deny one of the scoring forwards opportunities in front of goal.
Yeah, and is that really where the game is going to be won from? Because you mentioned all the attacking players that both sides have. You look at Ballyboden, the Basquels, Ross McGarry, Ryan O'Dwyer flying it at the moment as well, and obviously Crokes of Paul Mannion and Shane Walsh, Darragh Mullen, Shane Cunningham as well, who's done it over the past few years. So you look at both team sheets and they're the kind of standout players. Obviously, there's other players in there, Michael Darragh-McCauley Rory O'Carroll, like big players who've done so well for Dublin and for their clubs over the last few years. But is it really going to be whichever forward group comes out on top in the end? Is it whichever forward group performs? Is that where this game is going to be won in the end?
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit more than just what forward group shows up. I think it's what team is able to implement their game plan that little bit better on the day. So, scoring chances are going to be not so much restricted, but there's going to be huge pressure on anyone taking a shot at goal. So you need to be very clinical in the opportunities you get, particularly goal chances. But then defensively, what way can you structure yourself that you're denying space to the opposition's forwards? So I think what you're looking to try and get is a team performance that'll get you over the line over the run of 60, 65 minutes, assume we don't go extra time and further than that. So it's all well and good placing the aspirations of the club on the inside line or the forwards who are the star forwards, and certainly they have a job to play and see what way it will play out in terms of the scoring side of things. But defensively, don't be surprised if it's maybe a lesser name from a defensive point of view who actually manages to impact the game because of turnovers, because of what they do when they win the ball, supporting the attack in terms of the breakout and those real quick transitions. Can you get the ball out and into space? And where teams have thrived this year in the Dublin Championship, certainly from where I've been watching games, is using a foot pass. If you can deliver a ball 35, 40 yards when there's space before teams have a chance to filter back, that's when you give those star forwards the opportunity to really shine. And what you'll have on the weekend is 2 or 3 opportunities where there'll be a 60-40 goal chance, and it'll be the team who managed to make that a 30-70 in their favour goal chance and take it that then swings the balance of play. So there's a lot of little bits that have to play out. Not all going to come down to the forwards in terms of their returns, but you're probably looking to see what team can give the best team performance over the 60 minutes. And then from a defensive point of view, who can have an impact and how can you allow your forwards then to get opportunities to get at scores? And critically, can you get one into the onion sack, which really gives a huge lift to any team?
From a prediction point of view, it's going to be tough. Give one. Obviously, again, I think you mentioned earlier on, Bowden coming into the game probably in better form than Crokes, but Crokes have this knack and this habit of being able to do what it takes to win a game. So how do you see the game playing out?
You can't see what I'm sitting on now, but it's a big long fence, Derek. That
no better man.
I guess after on the base of last weekend, and I look back on the Crokes Raheny game there, because of the way Ballyboden performed in the first half, they just seem to have a little bit more momentum with them. So, when you throw it down, you say you have to stand one side or the other. I'd have a little fancying for Ballyboden on the basis of the performance I've seen throughout the championship this year, where they just seem to be going a little bit better and a little bit freer than Kilmacud. That said, you can't take away from the fact that in a number of years, Kilmacud have been under the pin into the last couple of minutes of the game and have found big scores to either draw games or win games and ultimately be crowned county champions. So while maybe I'm stepping on the Ballyboden side, the game won't be decided in the first 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. It'll really come down to the last 5 to 10 minutes. And that's when you'll see who can perform in the real clutch moments, who's going to respond under pressure, who's going to do the right thing with the ball. And that's why, regardless of how they're playing, Kilmacud Crokes obviously have a chance in terms of trying to lift the third title in the row. So the answer is Ballyboden by a shade, but Kilmacud Crokes to be pulling out of their coattails right to the death.
Okay, good stuff. A quick word on the Senior 2 final before we go, Coman, because it's obviously Fingallians against Clontarf this weekend. Clontarf relegated last year, back up at the first attempt this year. Fingallians back up in Senior 1 for the first time in quite a while as well. First of all, how do you see the two teams, say next year, competing in the championship in the Senior 1 championship for 2024?
Yeah, they're in a very lucky or envious position in that they go into the final already knowing that their Senior 1 status is secured. So it's a lovely opportunity to go out and, now I'm not expecting it to be wide open, but it's a lovely opportunity to go out and play. And while both clubs would love to get a bit of silverware and bring it back to their respective clubs, the prize was ultimately getting back into Senior 1. There's no question that it's a step up from where Senior 2 is at. So there's a higher pace, there's a higher physicality, there's a much bigger need to do the right thing on the ball and do the right thing under pressure when you have the ball. So, there's a step up. Both clubs have a lot of experience in their ranks. And in fairness to Fingallians, they lost Paul Flynn earlier in the season through a very bad injury. So it was great for them to be able to deliver for him in terms of getting back to Senior 1, but also for the club without him, that there's talent there. There's guys who are able to bring this team forward with or without Paul Flynn. And that's not negating the impact that Paul would have in terms of being available to them to play. So it was a big, massive win for Fingallians, both quarter-final and semi-final, to get there where they are. And Clontarf have been, they've been up and down a little bit, so they'd probably love to just secure that Senior 1 status, hang in there for a couple of years, no more than Fingallians, because that's really where the learning is. You're playing the top teams in Senior Championship at a much higher level of intensity, a much higher level of physicality. So if you can stay there and learn a little bit, it gives new guys coming in, and even the older guys, you're playing at a much higher level, a much higher, quicker pace. So I don't predict that either of them will win the championship next year in terms of Senior 1, but they definitely have squads capable of retaining their status within Senior 1. And when you come up like that, that'd be a huge achievement for both teams to do if they could do that. Admittedly, there's a match on Sunday that both of them would like to win, but really looking ahead, they both are strong enough to stay in Senior 1 if they can keep their group together and move forward. And then, may the best team, I suppose, win on Sunday. I'm only up the road from Fingallians here, so I have a split camp. My wife is a Clontarf lady, so I have two hats on. So I probably have to say Clontarf for the TV screen here or whatever on the basis.
For the easy life.
On the basis of the family connection, So it'll be a very tight game. Both teams a little bit different in how they set up, but very interesting game. And obviously with Jack McCaffrey, you have that lightning pace that Clontarf will bring to the game at the weekend. So another interesting fixture, certainly one worth tuning into.
Good stuff, yeah. So the Senior 2 final is at 1:45 on Sunday. It's Fingallians versus Clontarf. Tickets available on dublinga.ie, and the game will also be live streamed on Dubs TV this Sunday afternoon as well. 1:45 on Dubs TV, Fingallians versus Clontarf. Coman, you're on TG Carr duty on Sunday as well. It's Ballyboden and Endas versus Kilmacud Crokes, and that throws in at 4 o'clock. Tickets available on dublinga.ie as well, and it'll be live on TG Carr, so you'll be getting Coman's insights on the game and making him eat his words as the game progresses throughout the afternoon. Coman, thanks a million for joining us.
No problem, Derek. Felt your role.
Okay, now over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be chatting to the participating clubs in the Go-Ahead Senior 1 finals, Kilmacud Crokes and the Fianna to come over the next couple of weeks, and Kilmacud Crokes later on today. But first of all, we're going to chat to the club who are in both Senior 1 finals, Ballyboden St. Endas. Delighted to be joined by the Vice Chairperson of Ballyboden St. Endas, John Ryan, to chat to us today. Looking ahead to a big couple of weeks for the club, a big hectic couple of weeks for the club. John, not one, not two, but I think you've got 5 county finals coming up over the next couple of weeks, and 2, obviously, the Senior 1 ones as well.
Yeah, indeed, Derek. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Yeah, very exciting times for the club. We're in 3 hurling county finals and 2 football county finals. And look, the bunting is up, the flags are up, the signs are going up this week as well. So it's a great time for the club, and it's something what you work towards as members in the club. You're very excited, and this is why we do it. This is why we get involved in the grassroots level of the club, and in the hope at some stage that you'll represent as a player, that you'll represent your club and go on and play in Parnell Park. We've been there 2018, I think 2019, both hurling and football. We're fortunate enough to win back then, but we'd be hopeful now going across, and we have the buses booked as well. So there's a team of buses for the football for this weekend, and then when the hurling kicks in next week, we'll book for the buses. And some of those young kids that go on the bus, they create obviously a great buzz and a great excitement. And for them, it's probably the first time they've experienced a county final in the club. So we're very fortunate that way, that we've a whole team of volunteers involved as well in getting us to this stage. And I suppose volunteerism is the backbone of the club in many ways. And to an extent, something we've worked hard on recently as well. Both sets of management are homegrown. Kenny Naughton with the footballers, and Dave Curtin with the hurlers, and all their backroom team are all homegrown talent. It's something we put an emphasis on in recent years, and thankfully now it has come true. And it's a pathway maybe for other young budding managers coming through, that they see it as an opportunity here, that at this level, that they can participate at this level in due course, and they cut their teeth in some of the underage teams coming up along. And it's nice to be able to do that for those people as well that have ambitions to manage at a level. Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. We're expecting a big crowd then from Ballyboden here in Parnell Park at the weekend for the Senior 1 football final on the weekend, obviously after the Senior 1 hurling final. Obviously, you've spoken there about the fact that you're in 5 county finals. You got coaching guys coming through over the last few years, and obviously taking on these teams. the health of the club in general seems to be in good nick, outside of obviously what we see from a Senior 1 point of view, but even outside of that, across all codes, it seems to be in good nick in Ballyboden and Endas at the moment.
Yeah, like all 4 codes at senior level now represent at Senior 1 level. We have the ladies football, the camogie, and obviously the hurling footballers are all represented at the top level. But it's not just about that at top level. Like, we've numerous teams across all 4 codes. And then if you tip down, like, our members, overall, we have something like 4,000 members, in excess of 200 teams, and of that 200 teams, then you have about 160 juvenile teams. So there's a huge volume of work goes in, week out at juvenile level. And that's hugely important, that there's a conveyor belt, I suppose, there of players coming through to adult level. And not everybody is going to be a Senior 1 player, and that's the huge importance, I suppose, and a lot of emphasis we put, and it's part of the GA ethos as well, that you do provide a facility for every player, be him a junior E or junior H, or be he a Senior 1 or Senior 2, that opportunity is there throughout. So at juvenile level, like, we would have quite a lot of activity, as I say, week in, week out, and having 160 teams, as you can appreciate, takes serious management. And without the volume of volunteers that we have, it just wouldn't be practical. And yes, Sunday and the following Sunday is the big day for the 2 adult teams. But it's, I think it's hugely important that all our juveniles feel that they're part of that as well. And they've had a part to play all along. There will be mentors who would have been involved in these players at different levels. And that is part of the success story, and will be in the years to come, hopefully, that somebody might be managing an under 11 team today, and out of those that under 11 team at whatever code, you feel a great sense of pride as a manager or as a mentor or coach, that if a player there comes through and plays with your Senior 1 team in due course, you feel you have a hand and a part to play in the success story of that. And equally, everybody in the club that has anything to do with any of these players at any level all along will feel that they've had a part to play. So we're very healthy, I suppose, that way as well. Of course, it brings this huge amount of demands as well on facilities and everything like that, which is it's all part of a development process.
Let's talk quickly about the work going on at the club from a coaching point of view, because Timmy Hammers is there, Sean Og is there, Paddy's there, and they're doing great work in terms of I guess coaching the coaches, which is the big thing. In terms of what GPOs are kind of doing at the moment, and coaching officers are doing at the moment, is trying to improve coaching standards at the club from juvenile all the way up. Tell me a little bit about the work that Sean Og and Timmy and Paddy do in that regard.
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say, Paddy O'Neill came on board almost 2 years ago now. And Paddy brings with it a huge depth of knowledge in coaching. He has worked at the very highest level and continues to work at the very highest level. And we're very fortunate to have him on board. So he's brought numerous initiatives in. Like, we have improved on our strength and conditioning team. We have, as you said there, we have a new coaching team, which follows on from the great work that Brian O'Regan previously had done. That's Timmy and Sean Og. And there's a lot of initiatives there, and I just don't really have the time here to go through what they've done. Like, even stuff like code of conduct has come in, and we all know how important that is, both for members, for the playing group, and that we put in place a suitable protocol that we can all adhere to. And that work has carried on in the background and has been done. Okay, the red mist often comes down on the odd occasion, and I suppose really we have to try and as best we can adhere to those codes. Other things that have happened as well, we've had a total review as well of the protocols and the coaching procedures across all 4 codes. The respective chairpersons pulled together various people and put together, I suppose, a roadmap, what they felt of where they wanted to go, both from ladies football, camogie, hurling football. And out of that, small committee groups have been formed and report back up to Timmy, Paddy and his team and see how we can improve on all those areas. So that's work in progress and ongoing all the time. few other initiatives which are very important. Obviously, we have rebranded as well our underage section, which we now call Bowden Og. And we very recently started Bowden Spree, which is for our 5-year-olds. And I'm sure that's quite interesting. I'm told something like 150 5-year-olds down the pitch very recently. So I'm sure that was great fun managing those 100. I'm not so sure how much camogie or football or hurling was done, but anyway, they turned up and they're putting the Bowden colours on, I suppose, and they will be, I suppose, in who knows, in future years to come, they could be wearing the county colours. We just don't know. So a huge lot of work is being done in the background, and it's the type of work that never stops, and you can never take your eye off the ball. And we're very fortunate to have a great team of people involved.
You mentioned already, John, the kind of work going on. You know, it's not necessarily, obviously we see the Senior 1 teams out here in Parnell Park and County Final Day, but there's obviously a lot of other work going on at the club to make it, I guess, a community club. And that's very, very important. A huge amount of, I know if you're ever down in the club, there's plenty of activity there, no matter what time of the day you're down there at and what day of the week you're down there at as well. So maybe talk a little bit about the work going on in the club from the community point of view in terms of other activities that take place at the club outside of GA activities. I know, for example, there's a coffee shop down there, and I've been down there on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:00 and the place is heaving. So the coffee shop and Bowden Bliss, the ice cream shop there as well, bring a lot of activity to the club at all times.
Yeah, just as you mentioned, the coffee shop tribe started during lockdown actually, and provided a great facility opportunity for the local community to come together when we didn't really have an opportunity, which was in an outdoor. As you know, at the time we weren't allowed to group inside, so we had an outdoor facilities where people could easily keep their famous 2-meter distance at the time. So that was something, and that has now continued on, and it's an integral part of the club, as in its 2 club men actually run that shop. And then the Bowden Bliss came online as well. Mick, our bar manager, brought that in as well. So again, there's a queue, and I'm even told that we often get a phone call in advance to the club if there's a juvenile match on. The mammies of ladies have to ring up to know is Bowden Bliss open. So the attraction sometimes is more the ice cream and maybe the coffee.
The matches, yeah.
But that's lovely. That's nice and just part of it. But there's a lot of other stuff going on as well. Like we have drama as well going on. We have bingo going on. We have a walking group, and you know, Tána quit over our shul or Haven of Gaeilge. So there's a lot of good work going on the Irish side as well, and we must thank people like Shamie O'Neill as well, who has driven that. Like you'll see now, even the sign we put up last night about 2 county finals, we've included some Gaeilge on that as well. And a lot of the signage now are double signage around the club. There's various meetings going on, just people can join a group if they want to improve their Gaelic. And that's all good and positive, and Shamie is fabulous and passionate about it as well. And that comes across to all of us, and forcing non-Gaelgoers almost like myself to be able to use a few focal at different occasions. And that's another part and excitement of development that's going on behind the scenes, yeah.
Good stuff. And another, I guess, in that strand, the same thing. Tell me a bit about the Bowden Braves and the work that the Bowden Braves do as well in the club.
Again, Bowden Braves, yeah, as an initiative by Laura Burns, a club member, camogie lady, say possibly about 3 years back, for special needs kids. And we have training there every Monday night, and there's a slot and a time given to them on our all-weather pitch. And unfortunately, those numbers are growing, but there's a great team of coaches within the club. And funny enough, there are actually an excess of coaches willing to help out and support those kids, which I think is fabulous, because there's the school across the way, Saplings, obviously provides that facility for special needs kids as well. And I suppose it shows in many ways how involved the club are at a community level, and we're not just about winning matches in Parnell Park. We're more an inclusive society where we can hopefully provide a facility for many different strands of society in the community around us locally. So we're delighted to be able to provide that facility, and that is something that will continue in the far distant future, and we will support it all the way.
Great stuff. You've mentioned already maybe some of the challenges that you face as a club, because it's a growing club and it has been growing for the last number of years. and all the work going on at the club. So have you plans to grow the club, expand the club, or tell me a little bit about the work going on at the club in terms of trying to grow the club over the coming years, for generations to come?
Yeah, Derek. Yeah, we have. I suppose the biggest purchase in recent times was we purchased 12 acres of ground up in what we're calling the Carmelite grounds, which we're quite fortunate in that it's less than a mile away from our Ferrous Road entrance. And we recently got planning there for 2 pitches, and we're in the process of beginning that development right now. And that'll be a slow burning fuse because development of pitches takes its time. And that we have just recently appointed a contractor for that. But that won't be to the benefit of very few guys that will be playing in Parnell Park on Sunday and the Sunday after. That will be for the young members of this club, and they will benefit the fruits of the work that's going on there at the moment. So that's one development, and that's probably the biggest development at the moment. Our complex in Santa Maria as well, there's a development going on there whereby we're extending our, we're calling it a health centre, but we're extending the facilities of Spark, which works very closely with the club on all the rehab for all our players. But equally, we are putting in an audio-visual room upstairs, which hopefully will help in the analysis of games across all the codes. And that is something that was looked at on how we could maximize that space that we had up there. It's an old listed building. So there's quite a lot of work going on at the moment to try and bring that up to the required spec. So with that on board, developments over the years have been the wall ball. We put in lights on what we call the Prunty pitch, but it's a grass-based pitch. And there's huge demands on that. Previously, we had to travel over to Abbottstown for teams preparing for county finals. So that's no longer, and that's a great facility to have had huge demands on it. And we continue to have huge demands. We try and retain our main pitch, the Holy Grail, as some people call it, the Parky Miracle. We try and retain that for matches and for the weeks coming up to a big championship game for our 4 adult teams. But we don't have lights there. So like that is a very, very good pitch, and we try and keep it that way if we can. But I have to say at this occasion, none of this would possible, or the standard of the pitch would not be possible except for the maintenance team we have. And these again are volunteers, all volunteers. There's a group of 3 or 4 of them, and they're led by Vivian Ruddy. And we owe a debt of gratitude to those guys, the club do and all members do, purely because the volume of work these guys do is just incredible. And nobody really probably sees it or even appreciates it. Maybe they turn up, the pitch is lined, the grass is cut, the flags are there ready, the nets are sorted, all the issues that people nearly take for granted. And as I say, with huge debt of gratitude to the maintenance team. And I'm sorry to say, but the work is probably going to get bigger when we finish the job up in Carmelites as well. But that's it. And look, that's how a club works. And that's why, as I said at the beginning of the interview, why it's so critically important that everybody shares in this success story that we'll have. Hopefully, win or lose, that they'll be part of that story Sunday and Sunday week.
Yeah, and in that regard, you mentioned earlier on the how important the volunteers are at the club as well. If people want to get involved, if people from the area want to get involved in the club, either from a coaching point of view or playing point of view potentially, or even outside of that and other strands of the club as well, how would they go about getting involved in Ballyboden?
Well, mostly it happens at underage level, as we know, and communication goes out through the schools. And just as I mentioned, schools, we have 9 local schools that we're involved with, and they are the lifeline of the club, because that's where our members come from ultimately. And that message would go out at usually in September. The message would go out via Timmy and his team to advise them, like when the open day would be, and then they sign up and they come down and they pay their membership and away they go, and they sign up for hurling football, camogie, ladies football, whatever it is they're comfortable with. And we try and encourage them, the ladies to play both codes and the men to play both codes at the beginning, because it's important for the development of them as young men as well as young kids, that they play both codes. And then, human nature, they will develop, and their strengths will go in whichever way, and that's fine too. So that's one vehicle of a way of getting it. Other than that, like the simple thing is, anytime anybody wants to come involved and become either a social member or a full involved member, we just ring up the club and talk to our general manager, and he will take it from there and send out the suitable application form. And we're delighted, our doors are always open, even though we're bursting at the seams for facilities. There's no doubt about that, but we're always open for new members.
Great stuff, John. Listen, thank you very much for joining us today to have a chat about a big 2 weeks ahead for the club. So best of luck over the next couple of weeks in the Senior 1 football final this weekend and Senior 1 hurling final the week after. And like I say, all 5 county finals to come over the next couple of weeks. Thanks a million for joining us today, John.
Thanks, Derek. Thank you.
Okay, that was John Ryan from Ballyboden St. Endas. I'm delighted to be joined now by the chairperson of Kilmacud Crokes, Joan Keogh, ahead of a big week for the club. Kilmacud Crokes obviously taking on Ballyboden St. Endas in the Senior 1 football final this weekend at Parnell Park. Joan, thanks a million for joining us.
Very welcome. Nice to chat to you, Derek.
And a big week for the club as well. I'm sure plenty of excitement this week ahead of the county final this weekend.
Yeah, big week, great excitement. The flags are coming out in force again. The bunting's going up, and really big week. Obviously, we have the lads in their 3rd Dublin final, which is brilliant, and we have the women in the first round of Leinster. So really exciting time for the club again.
It's obviously been a hugely exciting time for the club over the past few years, hugely successful time for the club on the pitch over the past few years. Talk to me a little bit about that, about the success you've had across all 4 codes at the club over the past few years. It's been pretty evident, I guess, from our point of view.
Yeah, look, it's been great. It's been a fantastic couple of years. And funny, we talk about last year really as being a year like no other in the club. You know, we had the hurlers obviously winning back to back and almost pulling off a miracle in Leinster, right? We had the football lads obviously winning the All Ireland, and we had the women footballers winning Dublin and Leinster for the first time in our history. So a really special year, really special groups of players. Our Camogie team are obviously doing really well at the minute in Division 2. I think into semi-final stage at championships. So lots going on in the club, lots of success, but all born out of, and you know the story with every GA club, right? Born off the back of huge volunteer effort with coaches, mentors, administrators. And I think, you know, you go through these golden periods in every club, right? Where it all reaps rewards. And I think we're just in that phase right now.
And from the point of view, Joan, you've obviously had success at senior level over the past few years, certainly, but even at underage level, we can see that as well. So you kind of see the club is kind of growing really from the roots up, I guess. You know, we're seeing the success at the top of the tree from a Senior 1 point of view, but there's success as well, and in terms of growth as well at a minor and underage level as well.
Oh, absolutely. And look, you know, Féile footballers won All Ireland this year as well, which was really exciting. But look, fundamentally, the senior teams doing well is fantastic, and it's really encouraging for everybody, and it's great for the kids to look and see it. But really, a GA club, and our GA club, no different to any other, is all about participation. It's all about having somewhere for, you know, kids to come down on a Saturday morning and start playing sport with their friends. We have a hugely active nursery and a growing nursery across boys and girls. It's just enormous now in terms of where it's going. And we don't ever want to be in a place where we're shutting our doors and saying, right, lads, you know, it's nobody else coming in here on a Saturday morning. So hugely focused on the nursery and the underage development. We do a lot of work in terms of coaching our coaches, which is really important, because sometimes parents come down and, you know, maybe they haven't played, maybe they haven't come from a GA background, and they don't really know where to start. So we're very keen on dragging those people in across the gates and getting them coaching and getting them trained to coach. And that's been very successful for us. We have almost 1,000 Garda vetted volunteers in the club now across, you know, coaching, mentoring, administration. We require everybody who's involved in the club in any capacity to be Garda vetted, but that's an enormous volunteer effort in the community, almost 1,000 Garda vetted volunteers. So that really pays dividends as we look into bringing kids through nursery. Our retention is growing at every age group. Once you come out into 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s, minors, And then that feeds into senior. And we talk about senior, we talk about adult at all levels. We have, I think we've 8 adult football teams. We've probably 7 or 8 adult hurling teams. We've 3 adult ladies football teams and 3 adult camogie teams. So I think that will give you some indication of the retention that we're enjoying as a result of the investment at underage, and really getting people coming in and vested in the club, invested in the community, which after all is what it's all about.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously coaching the coaches, which is obviously a major, I guess, remit of the coaching officers at the club, at any club around the county. And I know you've Maria, the new GPO at Kilmacud Crokes over the past few months, Niall Corcoran, who's been doing brilliant work with Kilmacud Crokes over the last number of years. Talk to me a little bit about their role at the club. Obviously, it's hugely important in terms of engaging with new members at the club from a school's point of view, but also, I guess, coaching the coaches and how important that is in terms of improving coaching standards and therefore you'd hope playing standards across the club from juvenile all the way up to adults.
Yeah, so they're hugely important. And I think over the years, and Niall will certainly attest to this, over the years, the roles have very much changed from being out on the field with every team that you can to actually doing a lot of coaching sessions. We run a lot of courses. They're obviously out in the schools. And it's interesting in Crokes, we don't advertise as such. We have relationships with a lot of the clubs or a lot of the schools, around the neighbouring parishes or neighbouring areas. And we do help out with their coaching. So the two of them are in schools very regularly. There's a programme that they go in and they work through with the underage kids in the schools. But really their big focus day to day tends to be now working with our coaches. So it's training our coaches. So we've just gone through the new intake from a nursery perspective. So they're really busy at the moment running huge number of initial coaching sessions, level 1 coaching courses for all those new coaches that have come in. And that's really now the backbone of what they do. They also run, we have a hugely successful mini All-Irelands, which I think anybody who lives around the area will see going on during the summer. This year we had 2,200 boys and girls participating in the mini All-Irelands, which is just an extraordinary number. But for Niall and Maria and the other volunteers across the various different codes, because they run week on week across each of the codes, is a huge effort to, logistically to run a competition like that. So that's also a big part of what they do. The other thing they take an active role in is we have a very and growing inclusivity program running in the club on Friday evenings, and our senior players are really involved in coming down. But Niall and Maria take a significant role in that. And now when we run, anything like camps or minis, we have an inclusivity component there, which is really important for our community, and we know is giving huge value to the families there.
Talk to me about the success off the pitch as well, because in terms of growing the club as a community in the area, around the Stillorgan area, how important has that been over the past few years? Again, I dropped down to the club, I was saying to John Ryan, I dropped down to Ballyboden recently, I was very busy. I dropped down to Kilmacud Crokes a couple of years ago, maybe just after COVID, on I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, and the place was buzzing. It was really, really busy. And that was obviously outside of training or games. It was just a busy clubhouse. So talk to me about the work that goes on there and the activities that go on at the club outside of it just being a GAA club, I guess.
Yeah, and look, we consider ourselves to be as much a community club as a GAA club, quite frankly. And we have everything from KC Wheelers, which are cyclists. I think there's probably about 80 members there. So they run, various different events. They do very successful fundraising for Breast Cancer Ireland. They do a Malin to Mizzen or a Mizzen to Malin every alternate. Hugely successful. I think about 80 cyclists went last year, which was the biggest one ever. But that allows, men and women who used to play for the club to continue to do something else once they stop playing and maybe even stop coaching. We have a choir. We have on the premises, we have a Montessori school. We've got Pilates classes. We've got a winter card school. There's a gym there. We obviously talked about the summer camps. We've got a Crokes Talks program, which is targeted at mental health of our members and indeed the broader community. So we run various different talks that we invite people to come to. There's a real focus on mental health. In January of every year, we run a Kickstart Crokes program, which is couch to 5K, or people who've never cycled before, kind of getting them on their bikes. Hugely successful, and again drawing in, and I suppose an older, in many cases, demographic within the club, but keeping them very much part of our community and very much on site and around the place, and turning up for games and supporting the team. So it's hugely important. We clearly have a really supportive sponsor in Beacon Hospital, and they also run various different talks down in the club around things like cardiac health, which we open up to anybody who wants to attend, cardiac health, mental health, or whatever. It could be physio, it could be various different things. So we do try very hard, and we work very hard to engage in the community and make the club, a central hub. We are sitting right bang smack in the middle of Stillorgan. And you hear a lot of talk about big urban clubs, and listen, can't shy away from the fact that we are one of them. But actually that makes us no less a community than any rural club, and maybe even more difficult to maintain that community element. But I think it's something that we've done very successfully.
How has the club grown over the past number of years, even since you've been involved in the club? I had a look earlier on. I think the club was formed in the 1950s. Going over, even over the last, say, 20 or 30 years, how has the club grown to what we see Kilmacud Crokes is today, which is obviously, like as you mentioned, this really big club in Kilmacud and serving the whole community as well?
No, you're right. And look, if you look at, club was set up in the late 50s, I think 1959. A couple of clubs then amalgamated to create what is now Kilmacud Crokes. But Camogie didn't come into the club until 1973, and ladies football not until 1996. And really interesting statistic now is that I think on the latest numbers, about 45% of our members are female. So I think that'll give you some sense of the growth in female participation in GAA and in our club. So yes, the numbers are huge. They're growing all the time. We've about 3,000 playing members now across 200 teams. And if anybody's doing the math and think that doesn't work, we obviously have the small-sided games for the smallies. But the growth of GAA, and in particular the growth of ladies football and camogie, has been extraordinary in the club, and I think that creates a very different dynamic across the place, which is fantastic. Works for everybody. So really exciting growth, but not without its problems. Like, we are trying desperately hard to not have to cap numbers coming into nursery, and it is becoming increasingly difficult. There's a dearth of playing facilities in our locality. We spend an absolute fortune renting pitches all around the county to try and keep the show on the road and try and keep all of those teams with somewhere to train. And, that's really, really difficult.
And in that regard, Joan, are there plans, and I know, long-term plans, or are there plans at the club to try and grow the club, keep growing the club as much as possible in terms of facilities? And I know that can be difficult as well, because I think everyone in Dublin has mentioned before, the one thing we don't have really is green spaces in Dublin. And that's been obviously a problem for a lot of clubs around the county. From your point of view, are there plans to try and grow the club over the next number of years?
Listen, we're not actively recruiting. We're not actively looking to become some, mammoth club with, tens of thousands of members. That just isn't at the core of what we do. But I would be lying if I said we aren't constantly looking to see what we can do to either improve facilities. In the last couple of years, we have floodlit and done a lot of work on our home pitch in Park de Burka. We continue to do a lot of work in Silver Park up the road, where we have 2 pitches. We're probably due an upgrade on our small all-weather training facility in Glenalbyn as well. And we work jointly with Dunleary Rathdown to try and continue to get access to as much space as we can. But listen, it's really difficult. And, even spaces that we've used for many years, they move, they evolve, people develop them. We no longer get exclusive access to them. And they're all challenges that we're facing all the time. So yes, this is something that exercises our brains as an executive. And I know the chairs of all the sections, this is probably the number one thing that we talk about is how do we continue to keep providing access to the young people coming into our club, particularly as retention rates have improved. You know, the drop-off rate now is much less than it was. So I think I mentioned earlier the number of adult teams we have at each section, in each section across the codes. And, you know, if you bring that down to minors, 16s, 14s, you know, when I got involved first, there was, you know, one adult ladies football team. There might have been one minor team, one 16 team, maybe one or two 14s, and then, you know, the underage below that. That has changed completely, and across all of right across camogie, football, hurling. So I think that as we continue to retain more and more people actually into adulthood, because the beauty about, you know, I might be worried about some of the difficulties of a big club, but actually the beauty of it, unlike, and I'm from Wexford, so I know the challenges in rural clubs very well, my own local club, you know, they talk about fielding teams as being an issue. But the one really good thing about our scale is that there's somebody for everybody to stay playing when they, for example, come out of minor, right? Not everybody's going to be a senior A player, but you know what? You might play AFL 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know? So I think, you know, the problems we have are the problems we have. We've got to try and manage them. We do think about it all the time. We're looking for every opportunity to try and do what we can in that regard, for sure.
You've mentioned obviously the size of the club, and you know, I'm sure like any GA club around the country, one of the big things is trying to get more and more people involved in the club as much as possible in terms of volunteering. If somebody does want to get involved in the club from a coaching capacity, from a playing capacity, or even outside of that, volunteering at the club in another way, how do they go about that?
Oh, listen, anybody who wants to help out in the club, there's always a job to be done, that's for sure. So, you know, you can email info@glenalban.ie, go onto the website, and you'll find contact details there if you want to phone up and have a conversation with somebody about what you might be interested in doing. We do have somebody in the office there in the mornings, and I think we're always looking for people. And you know, that can range from everything from somebody who, you know, has an accounting background who wants to help out with some of the financial stuff to, you know, to coaching, to anything. I mean, literally anything. There's always a job to be done. So as I mentioned earlier, we do a good job of roping people in to volunteer, but there's always space for more volunteers, that's for sure.
I think like any GA club, once you're in, you can never get out of there, but you never want to leave. That's
absolutely true. I mean, you rock up to do one job, you know, 20 years later, you're thinking, how did that happen?
20 years later, you're the chairperson of the club. Is exactly how that happened for yourself. Listen, Joan, thank you.
It's fantastic. It's a great club, and we're blessed at the moment. We have a fantastic, you know, group of players, and as you said at the start, huge excitement as we head into this weekend. So I think there are a lot of us that will be hearing from Ratoath on Sunday afternoon straight into Parnell Park.
Good stuff. Well, listen, best of luck this weekend in the Senior 1 final, and obviously out in Ratoath as well with the ladies. And thank you very much for joining us today, Joan.
Very welcome. Nice to speak to you. Cheers.
Joan Keogh, the Kilmacud Crokes chairperson there, chatting about everything going on at the club as they prepare for Sunday's final. And before that, John Ryan from Ballyboden St. Endas giving us a glimpse of what's going on at Bowden ahead of a huge fortnight for the club as well. A quick reminder of the big fixtures this weekend before we go. It's Nafina versus Ballyboden St. Endas in the go-ahead intermediate all-county football final this Saturday afternoon at O'Toole Park, 4:30 throw-in. At the same time at Parnell Park, Scully Cunnell take on Parnells in the go-ahead intermediate football final, 4:30 Parnell Park this Saturday afternoon. And on Sunday, it's the big two games of the season, the culmination of the Senior Football Championship this year. The Senior 2 football final sees Clontarf take on Fingalians at 1:45 this Sunday afternoon at Parnell Park. And then after that, at 4 o'clock, Kilmacud Crokes taking on Ballyboden St. Endas in the go-ahead Senior 1 football final. Match tickets are available on dublingaa.ie for all of those 4 games. And if you can't make it to Parnell Park this Sunday afternoon, the Go-Ahead Senior 2 football final between Clontarf and Fingallians will be live on Dubs TV from 1:45. And the big one, the Senior 1 football final, will be live on TG Cahir from 4 o'clock. Thanks for joining us today and enjoy the games.